Hey, what's up, guys? And unfortunately, I have to be the bearer of bad news today. A massive article has just released detailing some of the inner workings regarding Battlefield 6, EA, developers, and a whole bunch of other stuff. In my opinion, this article details some of the worst stuff we have heard so far about Battlefield 6. This will be a very long video. I will leave timestamps so you guys can more easily follow things. If you do want to keep up to date with Battlefield 6, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, really helps the video out, and of course, join the Discord. All links are in the description to my Instagram and Twitter as well. Okay, so this article from Ars Technica dropped today, and it has first-hand accounts from people that have either worked on Battlefield 6 previously, are still currently working on Battlefield 6, or have just worked in and around EA. So these are first-hand accounts from sort of the inside. The author of this article starts it off by giving us a massive reminder of the events leading up to Battlefield 6. He goes through BF5's failure, Battlefield 2042's failure, the culture surrounding it, and he ends it off by stating each of the sources he spoke to shared their, quote, sincere hope that the game will still be a hit with the players once it actually releases. This article then goes into reminding us of the fact that EA hired, quote, 3 industry luminaires to lead Glacier, which is the code name for Battlefield 6. All of them are based in the United States. This would be, of course, Respawn Entertainment, Ridgeline Games, and I think Criterion. He also quickly reminds us of the hires of Byron Bede, who worked on Call of Duty Warzone, Marcus Leto, who is of course the co-creator of Halo, and the hiring of Vince Zampella, who was one of the leaders of the team that initially created Call of Duty in 2003, and he joined EA in 2010 to work on other franchises. On top of that, he also quickly reminds us of some very big names in the Battlefield scene, leaving EA and DICE, General Manager Oscar Gabrielson, and of course the creative director of Battlefield, Lars Gustafsson, who was remembered as Mr. Battlefield. He frames this as a changing of the guard in EA, and the next paragraph is where some crazy shit starts happening. He starts off by mentioning 2042 struggled against its big competitors in the scene, such as Call of Duty and Fortnite, and apparently, EA's executive leadership fully expects Battlefield 6 to be able to stand, quote, toe-to-toe with these competitors in the FPS market. This means that EA's executives set a massive, ridiculous player goal for Battlefield 6 of 100 million players over a set period of time, which does include the post-launch of Battlefield 6. Just for reference, here are some other numbers. Battlefield 1, the most successful commercial Battlefield title in the history of the franchise, only reached, quote-unquote, maybe 30 million plus. That is how delusional some of the high-up leadership at EA is. They are completely disconnected with reality, and they fully expect Battlefield to become their cash cow, their game that pretty much implants them as a big dog in the FPS space, their game that will farm them tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars for years to come. Unfortunately, this isn't surprising. We've always known EA is one of the most greediest, however you want to put it, companies out there. I believe they were voted worst company in the United States twice. And some things later on in this article really emphasize that, because we get to hear from some people that actually work under the control of EA that don't want to do that for much longer, it seems. Now, on top of the incredibly unrealistic player goal for Battlefield 6, this is also the most expensive Battlefield game ever created. It had a budget set for it for $400 million way back in early 2023, but this article reports that it is already far above that initial $400 million budget. And to make matters even worse, apparently, there is skepticism internally as to whether or not they can even get this done. I mean, just listen to some of these quotes from people that are working on the game. Quote, among the things that we are predicting is that we won't have to cannibalize anyone else's sales, that there's just such an appetite out there for shooters of all kinds that we will just naturally be able to get the audience that we need. I think people are surprised that they actually worked on the next Battlefield game and then increased the ambitions to what they are right now. Fast forward to February 2024, this was a big moment in Battlefield 6's development. The campaign studio, Ridgeline Games, which was being headed by Halo founder Marcus Leto, the whole studio was shut down. And apparently the reason for this is Glacier's or Battlefield 6's top leadership were quote-unquote dissatisfied with the progress they were seeing, and they made the call to shut this entire studio down. This article even reports that sources inside of EA teams outside of Ridgeline Games told him that there weren't proper check-ins on the state of the campaign until the final fateful review that caused the studio to be shut down. What kind of internal circus is fucking happening here? This article reports that the Ridgeline team couldn't possibly complete its objectives in the given time they were expected to be completed in. Quote, they kept reallocating funds, essentially staff months, out of our budgets. And we're sitting there trying to adapt to more with less. And keep in mind, these are quotes coming from people that are directly involved in this Battlefield 6 project. But perhaps one of the most unbelievable things in this entire article is next. Apparently, after Ridgeline Studios, the studio that was working on the Battlefield 6 campaign, was shut down, quote, there was essentially nothing left that Ridgeline had spent 2 years working on that they could pick up and build off of. So they had to redo essentially everything from scratch within the same constraints of when the game had to release. So you mean to tell me that they had 2 years to work on this campaign, the studio was shut down, and apparently there's nothing they can salvage from this fucking 2-year period where they're working on this campaign and they have to start over again? I find that almost completely unbelievable. But you know what? This is EA, this is Battlefield, nothing ever goes smoothly or to plan, so unfortunately, this is actually right on track. The current state of the single player is 2 years behind schedule, which 100% explains the recent campaign leak where you saw on Reddit, I'm not sure if any of you saw it, I cannot show it unfortunately, but take it from my word, the campaign leak featured a about minute-long clip where it showed a cinematic sort of thing happening, a dam being blown up, everything was untextured, there was a bunch of placeholders, and it just looked completely unfinished. This makes complete sense now. And then if that wasn't enough, this article starts to go into the internal culture of actually working within one of these studios that is making Battlefield 6, having to deal with EA, having to deal with each other, and the spider web of internal nonsense that is apparently going on. He spoke to people that are working in DICE Sweden, and apparently there is massive tension between some people at the studio and the new US-based leadership. But the tensions appear to be more serious than that. 2 other major factors were at play here. Quote, scaling pains as the scope of the project expanded and differences in cultural values between US leadership and the workers in Europe. Quote, DICE originally being a Swedish studio, they are a bit more humble. They want to build the best game, and they want to achieve the greatest in terms of the game experience. Of course, when you're operated at EA, you have to set financial expectations in order to be as profitable as possible. So this is just telling us once again, EA is a complete piece of shit to work for. They set unreasonable expectations on their developers. They don't give them enough time. And it's essentially just profit, profit, profit with no end in sight. And now we get a really good look into how Battlefield 6's development for the main sort of thing has been going on for the longest period of time. Apparently, when EA Studios are developing games, there are certain gates they have to pass during the development of the game. These are tests. These tests have certain criteria in order to pass it on to the next gate. Quote, for Gate 1, teams must have a clear sense of what they want to make and some proof of concept showing that this vision is achievable. As they approach Gate 2, they are building out and testing key technology, asking themselves if it can work at scale. Gate number 3 signifies full production. Glacier, or Battlefield 6, was expected to pass Gate 3 in early 2023, but it was significantly delayed. When it did pass, some on the ground questioned whether it should have passed at all. One person working at EA at the time had this to say, quote, "I did not see robust budget, staff plan, feature lists, risk planning, etc., as we left Gate number 3. So now we understand that Battlefield 6 is actually far behind schedule, it seems, and some people working on the game don't even think it should have been allowed through Gate number 3 in their criteria. The article continues by detailing, quote, "A former employee with direct knowledge of Battlefield 6 production plans told me that as Gate 3 approached, prototypes of some important game features were not ready, but since there wasn't time to complete proofs of concept, the decision was handed down to move ahead to production even though the normal prerequisites were not met." So looky here, once again, cutting corners when crunch time is approaching. The most important Battlefield game of all time, quite possibly one of the most important game releases of the past decade, and here EA is, cutting corners, pushing things that are not ready, while simultaneously having an utterly delusional player expectation of 100 million people. And once again, if that wasn't bad enough, it gets even worse, because in some cases, people that were working on the Battlefield 6 project would bring up particular problems that they were seeing with the production. And as a result, 2 EA employees that reached out to the person writing this article told him that after they raised concerns, they found themselves cut out of development meetings. Once again, I just have to ask, what kind of absolute corporate nonsense circus is being run in these studios? How do you expect to push a successful fucking product when you have people coming to you saying, "Hey, we saw this problem and we would like to report it," and then your action is to not include them in meetings? What are you guys doing? Is this seriously how bad it is? But continuing on, apparently Gate number 3, which is the gate for full production, was cleared as late as May of 2025. Let me say that to you again. Full production was approved, essentially, as late as May of 2025. It is currently July 2nd when I'm recording this. So, if this is true, that means Battlefield 6 has only been under official full production for 2 months! The article goes on to tell us that apparently, quote, "The alpha state was achieved for everything except the single-player campaign, but I'm told that this occurred with some tasks still unestimated and many discrepancies remaining, leaving the door open for problems and compromises down the road." So again, let me get this straight. They just basically greenlit full production, and they don't even have proper estimations on some things they need to work on, which means they don't know how long it's going to take to get the game ready to be playable. They quite literally do not know how much time it's going to take to polish this game to get it ready for release, and it sounds like EA is absolutely not going to be willing to budge that release date. Furthermore, it seems that the campaign of Battlefield 6 has some aspects of it on the chopping block. If they can't fully flesh out this campaign, they are probably going to reduce the total length of the playable campaign. The reason this article lists is apparently the campaign is not as big of a priority as the multiplayer, which makes complete and total sense. But part of me just can't get over the fact that the studio working on the campaign was shut down and apparently nothing from it is salvageable. What kind of fucking insane garbage is that? And now we get into the part of the article where I just want to emphasize before I go into this, I'm not trying to come off as insensitive. Maybe some things I say will come off as insensitive, but I think you will fully understand where I'm coming from. This next part of the article has to do with AAA burnout from the people actually working on these games. He starts off this section of the article by stating, more than 20 years ago, a spouse of an EA employee famously wrote an open letter to EA to bring attention to the long hours and high-stress situations that developers working on these games are actually dealing with. One EA staffer had this to say, quote, "My day could start as early as 5 a.m. The first half of the day involved meetings with a studio in one part of the world, while the second included meetings with a studio in another region. Then my evenings would be spent doing my work because I'd be tied up juggling things all across the board and across time zones." This is not particularly surprising to me. I'm sure working for any sort of gaming studio, particularly under the control of EA, has to be an absolute just horrible experience sometimes. But listen to this. This is another quote from somebody that works at EA, detailing just how long some of the breaks some staffers are taking actually are. Quote, "There's like, I would hesitate to count, but a large number compared to other projects I've been on who have taken mental exhaustion leave here. Some as short as 2 weeks to a month, some as long as 8 months to 9. And again, I don't want to come off as insensitive here. I totally understand every single person has their own things going on in their life, but you're gonna tell me that some people working on the next Battlefield game are taking 9 months of mental exhaustion leave? What is EA, a fucking labor camp? Do they have these developers outside crushing rocks for fun? I'll tell you what 9 months of mental exhaustion leave tells me. I think the people that are doing that, and I'm sure it's not many, are trying to get back at EA. I think them taking 9 months off is kind of like a fuck you EA. Like, fuck you, I'm not doing this, I'm taking 9 months leave. But at the same time, I feel like a whip has got to be cracked inside of EA. The disorganization is extremely apparent now, and apparently you have people taking 8 or 9 months off. Hey, we need to get to work. Like, we need to deliver this game. I understand it's probably an unbelievably stressful, crowded, ridiculous schedule with unbelievable expectations, but at the end of the day, like, it's kind of their job. It isn't like they're working 18-hour shifts 7 days a week at the glass breaking factory in 95-degree heat in, like, Bangladesh. They're likely working from home, from their home office, or they're in a big corporate studio, like, development area. So maybe I just don't understand what's going on here, but I don't know. 9 months of leave is kind of insane. Let me know your opinion in the comment section down below. I might get roasted for this, but hey, listen, hey, I don't care. So what this article has told us so far is the campaign is well behind schedule, the base game is likely behind schedule as well, EA's expectations are utterly delusional, and the people working on the game are apparently just on the verge of quitting. But one very interesting contrast I would like to point out is take a look at the leaked gameplay from Battlefield Labs. What I'm hearing in this article doesn't really translate to what I'm seeing in the Battlefield Labs leaks. To me, the multiplayer is looking pretty good. I think it's a question of how much more polish they are essentially allowed to put on Battlefield 6 now. Because in the opinion of many, it is already looking better than Battlefield 5 and Battlefield 2042. So my personal opinion is, I just hope somehow, some way, they manage to lock in, get everything sort of sorted out, and they manage to release a semi-acceptable product on launch that fully encompasses what we want to see as Battlefield players. In my mind, there is simply no excuse anymore. I'm so tired of hearing about Battlefield sucking, experiencing the game sucking, the game dying immediately, the community being destroyed, everyone just being in a big black cloud of like doom and gloom. I want to see some prosperity for once. I want to see the franchise actually reach some heights that it hasn't reached in a very long time. And I think they need to buckle the fuck down and actually deliver this. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate you guys. If you enjoy the content and want to keep up to date with Battlefield 6, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button on this video for the algorithm, really helps it out. And of course, come by the streams. I stream every single day, and we'll be streaming Battlefield 6 every single day once that game releases as well. Links are in the description. I stream on Twitch and YouTube at the same time because I multi-stream. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.